All right, let's get right into it. Overnight, the world woke up to a new and frankly terrifying war in the Middle East. What kicked off as a targeted strike has just exploded into a massive regional conflict, and the consequences are already going global. So, we're going to break down exactly how we got here, what's happening right now, and maybe the biggest question, what on earth comes next? You know, this quote from the early coverage really just hits the nail on the head. We are talking about a seismic moment. This isn't just another border skirmish or some proxy flare-up we've seen before. No, this is a fundamental, ground-shaking shift in the region's power dynamics. And the really scary part? Nobody, not even the leaders who started this thing, seems to have a clue where it's all headed. It feels like the old rulebook has just been completely thrown out the window. So this is it. This is the moment that lit the fuse. On March 2nd, the US and Israel launched this massive, coordinated military operation against Iran. And their main target? It wasn't a weapons facility, it wasn't a military base. In one of the very first strikes, they killed Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. I mean, think about that. The supreme leader, the guy who's ruled the country for almost 40 years, is gone. This wasn't just a strike, it was a full-on decapitation of the regime. And that's the question everyone is asking, right? How in the world did we get here? An attack this huge doesn't just happen out of the blue. It's the boiling point after months of rising tensions, brutal crackdowns inside Iran, and diplomacy that just fell apart. So let's walk through the timeline, step by step, that led us right to this moment. When you look at this timeline, what's really wild is just how fast everything happened. I mean, the fuse was really lit back in January with these huge protests inside Iran, which the regime then crushed violently. That crackdown pretty much poisoned the well for any kind of diplomacy. So by February, the nuclear talks completely break down. And from that point on, wow, it was just a few short weeks before military action became the option they went with. So the official name coming out of the White House is Operation Epic Fury. Now, publicly, the administration is framing this as a limited, surgical campaign. They're not calling it an invasion or an attempt at conquest. Their stated goal, as you can see, is to take out imminent threats and basically dismantle Iran's ability to fight back. We're talking its navy, its air defenses, its missile programs. The whole strategy seems to be to cripple the regime's power to attack its neighbors. And this right here just shows you the sheer audacity of the whole operation. I mean, taking out a head of state who's been in power since 1989, that is a move with unbelievable consequences. It's created this giant power vacuum right at the top of a regime that's now literally fighting for its own survival. So, if the hope was for some kind of quick, clean, contained conflict, well, that hope just evaporated almost instantly. Iran, even after that massive first blow, lashed out with everything it had. And the battlefield just started expanding by the hour, pulling in new countries, new groups, new fronts, all across the region. Just look at this. It shows you how fast this whole thing spiraled out of control. Iran's response wasn't just hitting back at Israel. They launched missiles at US bases and key American allies all across the Gulf. Then, in Lebanon, their most powerful proxy, Hezbollah, the group they fund and arm, opened up a whole second front. And the shockwaves just kept spreading. We saw angry protests spilling onto the streets as far away as Pakistan. It became a multi-front war literally overnight. To really get your head around the sheer scale of this initial assault, just look at this number. Over 1,000. In the first 48 hours, US and Israeli forces hit more than 1,000 different targets inside Iran. This was not a random bombing campaign. This was a systematic takedown of Iran's entire military infrastructure. Air defense systems, naval bases, missile sites, you name it. It was designed to be a massive, overwhelming show of force from the get-go. But, behind all of the military strategy and the geopolitics, there's a very real and very tragic human cost. The initial reports are already coming in. We're hearing about over 200 casualties inside Iran, at least 9 civilians killed in Israel from those retaliatory missile strikes, and the Pentagon has now confirmed the first 3 American service members killed in action. These are the first human tolls of a war that's just getting started. And the impact of this war, it's not staying on the battlefield. Not at all. The economic and humanitarian shockwaves are already spreading across the globe, and they're starting to affect ordinary people who are thousands of miles away from the fighting. We're talking about everything from the price you're going to pay at the pump to just being able to fly home from a vacation. Okay, this highlights one of the biggest global impacts right away, the threat to the world's energy supply. You see that narrow channel, the Strait of Hormuz? That is the artery for about 1/5 of all the oil on the planet. And with Iran now attacking tankers, that waterway is a live war zone. That artery is being squeezed shut. One analyst put it perfectly. He called it a heart attack in the oil market. And we're all going to feel it. And then there's the immediate chaos for just regular people. With a huge chunk of Middle Eastern airspace now a no-fly zone, major travel hubs like Dubai and Doha are basically shut down. This number here, just for Australian travelers, gives you a sense of the sheer number of people who are now stranded all over the world, with no easy way to get home. And of course, there is the humanitarian crisis. It's inevitable. You have organizations like World Vision already sounding the alarm. They're sending out these urgent reminders that as the bombs and missiles are falling, it's the children, it's the civilians who are the most vulnerable. People who are caught in the middle of a conflict they had no part in creating. So, all of this brings us to our final and maybe the most difficult section. With the supreme leader dead, the old regime totally shattered, and the entire region basically on fire, what happens now? The terrifying truth is there's no clear answer, and the path forward is incredibly dangerous for absolutely everyone involved. This question really gets to the core gamble of this entire operation. The U.S. administration is betting that by surgically removing the regime's leadership, the Iranian people themselves will rise up and create a new, friendlier government. But, and this is a big but, you have a whole chorus of regional analysts and historians who are basically calling this a fantasy. They're pointing to a very long, very painful history of foreign interventions that not only failed to create stable democracies, but often made things a whole lot worse. And this just perfectly illustrates that massive divide. On one side, you've got the White House promising a quick, decisive operation. 4 weeks or less, they're saying, ending with a liberated Iran. But on the other side, you've got these veteran Middle East experts who are just shaking their heads and warning that this isn't day 2 of a short war, it's day 2 of another bloody, drawn-out, and probably unwinnable endless war. And to make all of this military uncertainty even worse, there's this thick fog of diplomatic confusion. I mean, we are getting completely contradictory signals. On one hand, you have the U.S. president claiming that Iran's new interim leaders have secretly reached out, wanting to negotiate. But then, on the other hand, Iran's national security chief comes out and publicly, defiantly says, we will not negotiate. In an environment like this, it's just impossible for anyone to know which statement is true, or if either of them are. And so we end right back where we started, in a moment of absolutely massive change and deep, deep uncertainty. A 40-year-old regime has been decapitated, a regional war has been ignited, and the entire world is just holding its breath. The critical question is still hanging in the air. After the bombs finally stop falling, what, or maybe more importantly, who, comes next?